What is going on, everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be going over the exact cost to investing in real estate. You know, how much do you actually need to buy different investment properties? And currently I own 17 units and about $4 million worth of property in the Washington, D.C. market. So I have a little bit of experience with this, because the thing with real estate investing, if you haven't noticed, is that there's a lot of hype out there. There's a lot of people that say you need millions of dollars to invest in real estate, or other people that say, you know, you don't need any money at all. So in this video, I'm just going to cut straight to the chase and tell you exactly how much you need to invest in these different types of properties. So the very first cost with real estate investing is what's called your earnest money deposit. And that's basically, you put that down with the title company once you go under contract. So if it's an off-market deal where there's no real estate agents involved, I typically like to go for the least amount possible when it comes to my earnest money deposit. So I think the smallest amount I've ever done is like $500. I usually just try to do about $1,000 for my earnest money deposit. And you put that down with the title company once the seller accepts your offer. And usually you have to do it within like 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. Each contract is going to be a little bit different. It's good to do it, you know, sooner than later, just so you can like officially lock that contract in. And the thing to know with the earnest money deposit, if it's like a really savvy type of seller, they might require more than $500 or $1,000. They might say, hey, can you put $10,000 or $5,000 or maybe $20,000, depending on the purchase price of the property. And then if you're making an offer with a property that's actually listed on the MLS with a real estate agent, they're typically going to make you put like 2 to 3% down is pretty much the standard for your earnest money deposit. And that goes towards closing costs and down payment and that type of thing. So it's not like you lose that money. You would only potentially lose that money if you were to default on the contract. That's why I like putting like as little down as possible. Now, I've never defaulted on a contract before, but you know, it's always good to put as little down as you can. However, sometimes if there's like multiple offers, it's a high price property, you want to show the seller that you're as serious as possible. So I've seen people do like 5% down for the earnest money. I've seen even people put down like $100K for the earnest money deposit, just to show the seller that they're like set on this property. They're not messing around. They're not going to back out of the deal. Now, the next cost for an investment property is going to be the down payment. Now, this is going to vary drastically depending on the type of loan, type of property, type of situation. And we'll just cover a few of them. So if you're house hacking and you're doing like an FHA loan, which I'd highly recommend, and house hacking is basically where you purchase a property to live in one of the units, and then maybe you rent out some bedrooms or rent out some spare units. And with FHA, you can go up to 4 units and only have to put down 3.5% for your down payment. So if it's like your first property, definitely check out FHA. And the great thing about FHA, even if you own other properties, you can still use, and you haven't used your FHA loan, you can still use that loan. As long as you haven't used it up yet, it's still available. So I would try to look for like 2 to 4 unit properties and do FHA, because it's only 3.5% down. And then not only that, but you can actually get that 3.5% as a gift from like a friend, family member, whoever it is. You know, always talk with your lender to let them know that it might be coming in the form of a gift. But you can essentially do like 0% down sometimes if you were to have your friend or family member basically loan you the money for that initial down payment. So before we get to the next point, if you're looking for a one-on-one real estate investing mentorship, I do some one-on-one mentorships with different investors from across the country. So definitely reach out to me in one of the links below or on social media. And I'd love to have just a quick chat and see if it would be a good fit. Another good option for basically like 0% down or very low down payment are VA loans. So you obviously have to be a veteran and talk to your lender, but VA loans are actually 0% down. They do have a funding fee of about 2%. So always talk with your lender about that. But that's another scenario where you might be able to get a gift from a friend, or even maybe you pay a little bit more for the purchase price and then have the seller, give you some type of seller credit that can go towards your closing costs. Now, if you're looking at a property strictly as an investment to purchase it as a rental property, let's say, the bank is typically going to require 20 to 25% equity in the deal, which usually means a 20 to 25% down payment. However, if you find a great deal and maybe there's already a ton of equity built into it and the bank appraises it and agrees with you on that, then you could potentially bring a lot less to the table. If you find a super high equity deal, they already have that equity built into there, you don't have to bring as much. And that's one reason why I love off-market deals, because there's less competition. You can get super high equity deals and you don't have to bring as much to the table. And I have some videos below on basically how I find these off-market deals, but PropStream is a highly recommended resource. Then we have the down payment for fix and flip properties. And I've done quite a bit of these, and this can just vary so drastically. Usually, if you're doing a fix and flip deal, whether it's off-market, on the market, usually you go through a hard money lender or a private money lender. Now, the hard money lender, if it's a really, really good deal, always wants some skin in the game, and they're typically gonna make you put down about 10% of the purchase price, from your own cash as far as the down payment goes. And that's if the property is a really good deal. Now, if you ask around, if you ask different hard money lenders, there are some that actually have like 0% down, but then you're gonna have to pay way more in interest. And each lender is gonna have like different scenarios. So it is something where you should shop around different hard money lenders and try to find, the best, most flexible. Because sometimes these hard money lenders might just be like a guy who has a lot of cash and he might be looking for a deal. He or she might be looking for a deal, and they might say, okay, you know what, for this one, we'll just give you this money and maybe you don't have to bring 10%. So they can be flexible depending on the company and type of hard money lender it is. Now, if you're doing a fix and flip with a private money lender, that's when it can get more interesting. I've had several deals that I've purchased where I purchased the property through a private money lender. And in some cases, I basically only have to bring closing costs. In other words, I don't have to even bring a down payment because the deal is so good. The private money lender realizes that, and they'll work with you. So long as you've kind of built up a track record, or maybe you can just show that it's an amazing deal. Maybe you haven't worked with them before, but you can show you're a responsible borrower and that it's a really good deal. And a lot of times what I'll do with those deals is I'll purchase them with private money, and there's already a lot of equity built in. And I'll tell my private money lender, I'll say, look, over the next 3 to 4 months, I'm gonna do some minor repairs, and then I'm just gonna refinance into a conventional, like longer term loan. And all I need is really good credit and the property to appraise at the market value. And because there's so much equity, I don't have to necessarily bring too much to the table. The next cost for investment properties are the marketing costs to actually find a deal. Now, there's some investors that are super successful that don't spend any money whatsoever on marketing. They just have a lot of agents, a lot of investors, they just have a big name, and people just bring them deals, believe it or not. They've just built up their network where people just bring them deals. Or maybe they just look on the MLS for deals. Although the MLS is competitive, if you know what you're looking for, maybe you search by keywords like handyman special, fixer-upper, TLC, that type of thing, you can still find good deals out there. And I found with the MLS, especially with like the multifamily deals, you can find much better deals with multifamily because there's not as much competition. Most people are just looking for the fix and flips. So you can look at like small multifamily, maybe 2 to 4 units, something that you can manage. And there's a lot of opportunities there, much less once you get into like the bigger like 10, 20, 30, 50 unit range. But anyways, back to the actual cost for finding these deals. Some of the top investors in every market, they might spend $50,000, like easily $50,000 a month on marketing. And they're spending it on like direct mail, maybe TV ads, maybe bus stop ads, bandit signs, online marketing. They might spend a fortune on different various channels, and also cold calling. They might have cold callers, whether it's overseas or here, that they pay, basically on a full-time basis to call different sellers. And you absolutely don't need to spend anywhere near that amount to find deals. I think the most I've ever spent in a month is maybe $10,000, but if you have a budget of even $500 or $1,000, you can definitely dig up some leads. And you can make your own cold calls. You don't need to pay someone to do that, or text blasting. Myself personally, I like to do a lot of direct mail, and then I try to network with a lot of different agents and a lot of different wholesalers to bring me these off-market opportunities. And you really have to think of it like on a long-term scale. As a real estate investor, your only expenses are pretty much like your marketing. You can just work from home, right? So sometimes if you were to buy a franchise, it might cost you like $100,000 to buy the franchise, right? With marketing, it's crazy. Like investors like, I don't want to spend $500. I don't want to spend $1,000. It's like you got to spend something to make money a lot of times. The investor that's spending $50,000 a month on marketing, if they just get one deal is probably worth easily $50,000 to them. And you need to find out what a deal is worth to you and then kind of work your numbers backwards. I'm perfectly fine spending, $5,000, $10,000 a month because I know I'll probably get, 50, 100, maybe 200 leads. And out of that many leads, I'm almost guaranteed to purchase at least one deal. And the biggest takeaway I would give you from this, whether you're spending money on marketing or maybe you're just doing networking and doing your own activities to find deals, is you just need to be selective. Make sure you evaluate at least like 25 or 50 potential deals before you purchase one. You really want like the low-hanging fruit. You don't want to be like me. The first deal I ever bought was like a studio condo overlooking a parking lot, and I looked at like 2 properties and then I just bought that one. And I even bought it at the right time, at like 2009, 2010 timeframe, and I didn't even like make money on it because I wasn't selective. I just bought the first thing that I saw, and I should have bought something with more bedrooms or more potential. The next cost with investment properties is your closing costs, and so that's in addition to the down payment. So if you're doing like, let's say FHA, that's going to be 3.5%. 5% down. If you're doing a conventional loan as a rental property, it might be 20% down, 25% down, and then closing costs are going to be an additional 2 to 3%. And most title companies, you can easily find out what your closing costs are going to be. Just go on their website. In the bottom right hand side of their website, they typically have like a closing cost calculator. So you can just type in the property, type in the type of loan you're going to get, and then you can get a pretty good estimate of what your closing costs are going to be. And closing costs include things like, I'm just going to read off a recent deal that I just did. You know, it might be an appraisal fee, flood determination fee, tax service fee, homeowners insurance, property taxes for the first part of the year, recordation taxes, title fee taxes. So typically the title company is going to charge like a fee to do the title work. There's going to be title insurance, various, like make sure there's no liens, that type of thing. So all in all, you can plan on about 3%. And I would add one thing to the fees. If you're working with a hard money lender, they will charge you a fee for everything. They'll charge you like every time they come out to look at the property, that's going to be a fee. They're going to charge you like some appraisal fees, acceptance fees. There's going to be a lot of fees with hard money lenders. So make sure the hard money lender you're working with has really good reviews, because even the ones with really good reviews are still going to charge you fees. So it's just something you need to, you know, be aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to scam you or anything like that. There's just a lot of fees associated with it. It's called hard money for a reason. It's not easy money. Okay, bad joke. The next fee for investment properties is junk removal fees. So when I say junk removal fees, I'm not talking about junk lender fees. I'm talking about actually moving junk out of your investment property. So a lot of times you can get a great deal, whether it's on the market or off the market, if you just tell the seller, say, look, I'm gonna close quickly. You can leave whatever you want at the house. I'm gonna buy the property as is. And obviously your purchase price is gonna be a lot lower so that it still makes sense for you as an investor. But if you make it as simple and easy as possible for the seller, you can oftentimes get a great deal. However, when you go to remove that junk, it could cost a little bit more than you're expecting. And look, yeah, you could do it for free. You could just remove all the junk yourself, but I'd highly recommend just paying a junk removal company. And myself personally, I've paid anywhere from like as little as like $3,000 upwards of like $25,000 for like a hoarder house to basically remove junk out of a house. Something you have to factor in, but definitely try to get a professional company to do it, because you can just get it removed in like a day. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to deal with anything. It's like moving. Like, yeah, you could move all your stuff yourself to a new house, or you could just pay a mover and wouldn't have to worry about a thing. Another cost with some investment properties are eviction fees. So sometimes you can get a great deal, but you might have to inherit a bad tenant. However, you can just kind of factor your numbers backwards. You know, if it might cost you, let's say $5,000 in attorney fees to evict a tenant, and maybe let's say 6 months of lost rent, well then maybe you multiply that times 3 or 4 and say, okay, we'll factor in $30K, $40K for the eviction and headache costs, and you know, a little bit of margin of safety in there. You can work your numbers backwards and make an offer like that. But eviction fees, you know, sometimes it can be $5,000 plus, you know, 6 months of lost rent. So it all depends on your area. Like Washington, D.C., for example, I'm evicting someone right now. It's a tougher city, so you have to factor in, you know, a good amount more than if it was like Virginia, for example, where it's significantly easier to get somebody out. The next cost with your investment property are the renovation costs. So sometimes you might buy an investment property that just needs a little bit of work. Sometimes it might need a ton of work. And the best way to really kind of come up with an estimate, you're never going to be 100% with your estimate, okay? So just get that off the table, right? But you don't want to be like significantly off. You want to be in the ballpark. And the best way to do that is like make a label of, or make a list of the big ticket items like roof, kitchen, bathrooms, finishing a basement, landscaping, you know, windows, that type of thing. Make a list of like the top 10, 15 big ticket items, and then go on websites like Home Advisor is great to get like a rough ballpark estimate of what it might cost. Go inside Facebook groups. A lot of Facebook groups will say like, hey, what is the going rate for a renovated master bathroom in Washington, D.C.? And a lot of times you can get some good numbers and get a ballpark, and then maybe use the median number. And then you can also just ask contractors or ask investor friends of yours, hey, what does it cost to renovate a kitchen? What does a new roof cost for a single family house? And you'll start to get a very general idea. And then you can use like median numbers for all of those, come up with a list of like the top 10 or 15 things you're going to do to the property, and then add about 15%, because there's always going to be things that they might have not factored in. Maybe there's always things that you're going to find, especially if it's like a really older house. You should factor in almost like 20% extra than what you're planning on spending. The next costs are when you actually go to sell the property. If it's a fix and flip and you're going to sell it, you absolutely need to pay for a stager. And staging can cost anywhere, like if it's a really small property, probably starts at about like $2,000 or $3,000, And if it's like a 5,000 square foot $1 million house, you might be paying $20,000 for staging. I would say the average cost for staging is obviously much less than $20,000, but expect to pay like a minimum of $3,000 for like a really, really good stager. And you also want to get professional photography, which costs another, between $500 and $1,000. And if you just do those two things, professional photography and a stager, your house, regardless of how good the renovation is, will look amazing. And then you have to pay a real estate agent to list the property. And a lot of times a real estate agent will include staging and professional photography in their services. However, this is a place where like you don't want to get a discount agent to just like take photos on their cell phone and put a flower pot up and call it staging. You really want to have this done professionally. And better yet, what you can do is if you get a professionally staged, professional photography, you should get your real estate license and just list the property yourself. I know it sounds bad, but it's really not that hard to be a real estate agent, if it's your own deal. You can price it to sell. And like I'm an agent, I can list my own deals. I can save $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on every single deal now. And because I've shopped around hard money lenders and private money lenders, I'm also saving another $10,000 right there. Just by kind of doing those two things, I'm saving. It's almost a deal in itself, in addition to the profit that I would make on a normal real estate transaction. I can buy more properties now because deals that previously weren't deals because I wasn't making that additional $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 are now suddenly deals. You're gonna open yourself up to more potential deal opportunities. And if you're looking for an investor-friendly brokerage to join and you want to work with me one-on-one, definitely reach out to me whether on social media or in one of the links below, and I'd love to have a quick chat and see if it would make sense. So thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.